my hot take, which I think is the truth, which is that internal family systems therapy is shamanism.
Hey listeners, and welcome back to How the Wise One Grows. In today's episode, Kelly, Emma, and I had an incredible conversation all about somatics, internal family systems, and all the healing things with Molly Bienstock. But before we dive in, let's take a moment to land here together with a big breath in through the nose and exhale out through the mouth. So today we are with Kelly and Emma, who you met in our Embarrassing Stories episode, which is wonderful and linked in the show notes. And we have a very special guest today, Molly Bienstock. Molly is a therapist, an educator, raising all the hands in the air, yoga teacher, embodiment guide, and reparenting coach. And today, Molly is here to talk to us about somatics. Molly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Holly, for having me, inviting me. Thank you, Kelly and Emma. It's just so nice to meet you and be with you.
We are so excited and have so many questions about somatics. So I kind of just want to dive in with like the basic question that's probably on the mind of a lot of people who are listening is like,
Mhm.
what is somatic therapy and how is it
Mhm.
different from talk therapy?
Yeah, great question.
I'm very curious.
I think most people are.
Mm-hmm.
TBQH, to be quite honest. I think most people are.
Yeah.
So somatics, the root of the word soma just means body.
Mm-hmm.
So it just means anything that's body focused, body based. Um, Somatic therapy can look like a lot of different things. It's a very broad term because body is a broad term, right? What are we
Yeah.
talking about here? Are we talking about muscles, organs, joints, energy, right? There's so many
Mm-hmm.
layers of this body. It's psychedelic. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many experiences that one can have within it. And the practitioners vary as much as bodies vary. So somatics is a really individually based experience. And there is a specific school of thought called somatic experiencing, which you've probably heard about, that was developed by Peter Levine and really just based off of like naturalistic observations, like of nature, of animals, of nervous systems in the wild. And we are
Mm.
also nature, we're no different. So we experience the same things. We just have slightly different expressions of consciousness and different ways that our brains and nervous systems function in the world, especially in modernity. Like we're not in the wild.
Mm.
So, somatic therapy is a body focused experience facilitated by someone or a group of people to help you get more embodied, which can happen through breath, through movement, through stillness, through meditation, through yoga, through visualization, through sound. Um, so the way that I do somatic therapy is I integrate all of those things that I just named and like some of the work from my mentors, people I've met and haven't met. I haven't met Dr. Peter Levine or Dr. Richard Schwartz of internal family systems therapy, but those are
Mm-hmm.
like very, very important mentors to me, as well as like really fantastic, beautiful people that I've been able to be on retreat with, like a dear teacher, Adriana Rizzolo, who's at Art of Loving on Instagram, and Luis Mojica, who's at Holistic Life Navigation on Instagram, and another mentor of mine, Aisha Castillo. Um, and then my ancestors, like my own body is my teacher. I am
Mm.
from a Jewish lineage, and there's just a very rich history of magic, mysticism, being in a body, having trauma, having joy. So just the contradictions of being alive is something that I'm interested in and
Mm-hmm.
offering to people so they can, you know, experience their own sense of what it means to be alive in their bodies.
That's
Love
beautiful.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
Well,
No,
thanks for
exactly.
listening. Okay, I'll see you guys.
Yeah,
that
like,
was so
good
nice.
job.
And we
Nailed
out.
it.
We know all
You
we
guys
need to
get in
know.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The body cries.
Well, I think I think that I know you were just kind of just really quickly touched on internal family systems, but if you could maybe explain that for people who haven't heard it before and
Mhm.
how that fits in with somatic therapy and with that, like I mean, I personally have focused on a lot of that in with my own therapist here in Tennessee, and I have felt like I was explaining to Holly at an earlier time, like how amazing it has been to work in some with somebody using somatics for the first time, and oddly enough, feel like I have been gifted this entirely new language to communicate with my body, even though like it's stepping away from talk therapy, you
Mhm.
know, in certain ways and just learning how to drop in. And I think like internal family systems has been like a massive part of that new language, for lack of a better word. So maybe you could explain a little bit on internal family systems and how that helps you communicate and navigate with your body.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, Emma, you said so many great things about what it is, and you were like, if there's a better word than language, I don't think there is. That's so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning the language of our bodies. Um, and I think you really helped to answer, the distinction question from Holly about the difference between like talk therapy and somatic therapy. Um, as humans who do this thing of communicating like this with our little squares, we talk and we
Mm-hmm.
listen, like it's a huge part of somatic therapy or just therapy in general is talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think perhaps the difference that I've come to understand quite recently is that maybe you could like have what seems like a normal regular talk therapy session,
Mm-hmm.
but the solutions are always coming back to the wisdom of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to talk about internal family systems, another way that we could kind of talk about that is something called parts work.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I was kind of saying before, we have all of these different parts of us, whether it's like an arm and a leg, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like a liver or a spleen, or like an eyeball or a tongue. Like, these are
Mm-hmm.
just different parts. Like, we can kind of get on board with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then in internal family systems therapy, it's just, I'm really gonna say my hot take, which I think is the truth,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
which is that internal family systems therapy is shamanism.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really like, I've had folks in session have past life regressions. It's like
Mm-hmm.
how open you are to connecting with an image, a
Mm-hmm.
memory that is being shown up through pain or discomfort or some moment of pause.
Mm-hmm.
It's connecting you to like maybe another body, right? And I mean body like a body of water,
Yeah.
an owl, a different
Mm-hmm.
life that you lived. I know I'm going like out here right at the start.
Get out here.
I'm out. All right, I'm out.
I love it. We're jumping out there with
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
Like that's really like a huge value of mine is animism, which is
Mm-hmm.
like all things are alive. Even this
Mm-hmm.
like desk that I'm sitting at is like vibrating,
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about parts, like is there a possibility, do we have the capacity to vibrate at a level of which we can hear the language of a certain part?
Mm.
And that usually means like slowing down more than feels comfortable
Mm-hmm.
and getting in touch with an aspect of ourselves, regardless of how we feel about it.
Quick little note here, if you want to learn more about shamanism and animism, check out episode 74. We have it linked in the show notes for you.
Parts work is so fascinating. Um, Dr. Richard Schwartz talks about that we have protectors right? So that we have two kinds of protectors. We have a manager or managers, and we have firefighters. And so the managers are the part of us that like have a clipboard and are like checking things
Mm-hmm.
off and are like keeping shit together on the outside, are sometimes like most of the time overworked parts of us. And we feel really fatigued or exhausted, or we feel like, why am I like not, I can't like be authentic in this moment? Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
authenticity mean to me right now?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we also have firefighters who will put out the fire of our lives, whatever that is, in whatever ways they can. So sometimes that means like addiction, like I can't deal with this right now, I'm going to drink, or I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
overeat, or I'm going to sleep, like whatever patterns feel accessible to numb. That's what the
Mm-hmm.
firefighters will help us do. There's also parts called exiles, which get like pushed to like the deep, dark corners of our beings, which sometimes can be like our sexuality, like our eroticism, our like
Mm-hmm.
desire, our playfulness, our joie de vivre, like whatever it is that like is like edgy, or
Mm-hmm.
pushes up against some kind of you know feeling like we're not like belonging to the group in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets like learned out of us, but it actually just gets like pushed down, right? Those parts are still within us. And then
Mm-hmm.
like lastly, I think maybe just for now, there's also something called the self, capital S. And I think in cultures you could call this like the soul. Um,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like lots of different ways to describe self, capital S, but essentially, like when I talk about reparenting, the self is this untraumatized aspect of our beings that is, yeah, like the never ending spirit of love, God, the
Mm-hmm.
universe, the connection to like that avatar tail that plugs into the big tree
Mm-hmm.
of life or something. And there are these other parts of us that get like mangled and gnarly, and then like get ugly, and then like get really scary, and we're like, whoa, you're being really scary right now. Like, what's going on? But usually if there's a monster under our bed, we're like, I'm not going under there. What, my
Mm-hmm.
logic brain is like, why would I
Mm-hmm.
do that? There's
Mm-hmm.
scary monsters. And then the reparenting aspect is like, should we get a flashlight?
Mm-hmm.
Go check under the bed. I'm gonna hold your hand because this is scary and this is new, regardless of what we're gonna see. I don't know, but I got you, right? Like it's that wise parent, elder, God, goddess,
Mm-hmm.
spirit, great mystery, capital G, capital M.
Mm-hmm.
So the self, when we have conflict, whether it's internal or external, like with other people or relationships, we are usually wanting some kind of love, forgiveness, connection, understanding, time and space from the self
Mm-hmm.
to that injured or wounded part. And
Mm-hmm.
this like comes up, these like, they're called like attachment wounds or like attachment injuries, like when we don't get what we desperately basically need as children. There's been like a lot of studies, happy to talk about them. I'm a big nerd, as you can see. But
Love
then
it.
we get these like corrective experiences with
Mm-hmm.
other people, and then we also can get them like with ourselves. Or, I'll always do a plug for nature. We get them from nature,
Mhm.
this like unconditional love.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Whew.
Are you saying that through somatics, it helps us like communicate through our body's language to then connect to those internal parts? I kind of think of it as like my internal community sometime,
I
like
love
who's
that.
all
Mm-hmm.
here. And is it like through somatic experiences we can tune into them and hear their voices and communicate with them? Because normally we're so flooded by all the mind stuff, all the societal things, so we have
Mm-hmm.
to slow down so that we can go like in and down to that internal community and hear what's
Mm,
there.
mm, love that, Holly. I love that so much. That's actually a question of like IFS therapist that I studied, where they would ask both for client and facilitator, who's here,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know, I
love
think
that.
this can get I love that too. Yeah, who's here and for both parties, right? Um,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really liked that. You know, I witnessed this therapist say, there's a part of me that wants to do a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that's like a little distracted by my dog barking in the other room.
Yep.
You know, like there's a part of me that's like, oh, just heard my belly growl. You know, it's like this is a tending. This is just like a
Mm-hmm.
consistent tending to. I think we have a pretty good understanding of like when we do feel like hunger and thirst or like cold or hot, like those are
Mm-hmm.
parts of us also, right? Those are like that interoceptive system, that
Mm-hmm.
community. And then the proprioceptive system is like where are we in relationship to
Mm-hmm.
time and space. And somatic practices can really almost immediately in my experience, it's not like a fast thing. Somatics is famously like slow and steady over time, but like
Mm-hmm.
the results of these small things, like subtle things, are so profound, where we do like an orienting practice where we just like look around the room, and maybe we can do this right now,
Mm-hmm.
where we
Yes.
just like we literally just look around the room. This is called orienting. And you really just let your head, neck, and eyes fall on what they want to fall on. There's a color, a texture. And this is like a beautiful practice to then just see how your breath responds. What are you noticing? Where do your eyes kind of want to hang out? Where do they want to dart away from? Just getting curious.
Mm.
And then I always end like a short orienting practice with looking behind us. Kind of looking over each shoulder. I noticed that I just had a deeper breath come. And, you know, slowly coming back into shared space. This is just a way to like let our eyes have proof about like feeling safe to go inward and check in with our community.
Mm.
We don't feel safe like in the
Yeah.
space that we're in.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd be so curious too to just hear how that like what that was like for you guys.
I love you said something during it that was like just be curious, and I just moved back up, not just moved, I guess it's been a year and a half, which is crazy. I used to live with Emma in Nashville, and
Mm-hmm.
I moved up to Connecticut, but I in Nashville had an amazing therapist who was she didn't specifically say like somatics was what's it called, like a specialty, but she described herself as an experiential therapist, which I had never heard of. And I mean, Emma and Holly can both tell you I am in love with this person. I was like, so I feel like, oh my gosh, I've like
Mm.
referred everyone in my life to go see her, but she was so wonderful at reminding me whenever and we worked on a lot of internal family systems and things, and she was so wonderful at kind of giving me like the mantra of whenever I want to like fall into judgment with myself or at a certain part of myself, to
Mhm.
just try to reframe that as curiosity. And I feel
Oh,
like
that's so good.
it was so, but you said something about just being curious about like, what do your eyes want to fall on? And I think that was a really big that was a big thing I noticed, is that I was like, "Ooh, what should I be looking for? Like what should I be doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And then just being like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, I don't know, my eyes can do whatever they want to do. What do they want to
Oh,
do?" And I feel like that's but that yeah, that just brought me back to that, cuz I'm still it's something that has helped me so much, because I think for years, my inclination when I noticed myself um, judging myself or judging my reactions to things, then there would be this like layer of shame and anger at myself, or even, or like frustration, or like, oh, why are you being judgmental? And then I'm just being more judgmental towards that thing. And I think for such a long time, my kind of go to was like, it was kind of like being like a way too stern teacher to that part and being like, stop, like, put down the judgment, stop, go sit down. And that didn't do anything for me except make me feel more shamed. And so I loved this idea of like turning it into curiosity and being like, instead of being like, you're doing this thing again, be like, huh, I'm doing that thing again. I wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just literally. So
And that's
yeah, that
okay.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just being like, oh, interesting. Okay. Because it's all, I think it takes so much of the shame out of it for me when I am able to like rename things instead of um like categorizing it as good or bad, instead of putting any morality to it, basically just being like, all of this is data. It's all info. And I'm just learning about myself with every second that I'm alive. So like every time that I'm like, oh, okay, that's something that's happening right now. That's a thought I
Mm-hmm.
just had. Like, I think it's so helpful. So I really appreciate that just reminder. And in doing something even like so not time consuming, but just a little thing to kind of be like, this is where I physically am right now. And
Right.
Mm-hmm.
what am I noticing from it? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing.
Mm. Wow.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so transformative. I love you said I'm just learning about myself every second of every day.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we can partner with this instead of like battling it,
Mm-hmm.
it's we're gonna have a better time.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
so
I
funny.
know.
I
Exactly.
was I was
Yeah.
talking to my sister, and you guys actually, any of you might be able to help me, because I of course can't think of who actually said this initially that I was hearing it from. And I was like, it was either Brene Brown on a podcast, or it was Elizabeth Gilbert in
I
I
mean,
don't know if you've read Big Magic.
I
Like,
love Big
Mm-hmm.
Mac.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was one of, and I'm like, it's very likely that the place I first heard this was one of them interviewing the other on one of their podcasts. So I'm like, somewhere. But I remember hearing this analogy of going for like your life being a road trip and being like, all of the parts of me are always in the car, and you're never going to, whether you
Mm-hmm.
want to or not, you're never going to fully like leave any one part of you stranded at the roadside. And
Mhm.
no matter how much you might tell yourself, like, it would be kind of nice to leave fear or anxiety or whatever at the gas station and just like take away, like they're there for a reason. And I loved whoever it was. I remember saying, like, kind of having a conversation with their fear and
Mhm.
saying, um like, we'll make a deal. You're always invited on the road trip. You're never going to not be in the car, but are you've lost your it was some you've lost
Yeah.
your radio privileges.
Certain
You don't get to,
privileges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't get to choose what we listen to. You don't get to ride shotgun, and you certainly and very adamantly never get to drive the car or tell us where we're going, but you can
Yes.
sit in the back
Mm-hmm.
seat
Mm-hmm.
and you can be there, and we'll hear
Yeah.
you when you need to, because I think it is one of those things where it's just like, it's so helpful to go like, oh, right, this is something that was designed to keep me safe, or it was designed
Mm-hmm.
to keep me out of trouble, or, whatever the
Yes.
thing is, like, it's trying to help. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that's, you know, Emma, I know you and I have talked about this a lot with, specifically with, and I'll let you share your
Yeah.
how you view internal family systems, but I know that's something of like just being kind to every part.
Mm-mm.
Yes. And creating space for every part. But I also kind of something that you said, Kelly. made me want to ask you this other question. Maybe you can kind of like expand on this as well, which is like I do feel like with not you're never going to drive the car. You're like you have been, you're now a backseat person.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of times something that I personally have noticed is like getting into like these cycles where it almost feels like I know that everybody exists in depending on the day and the week and the month and the year and the way that each person's body works
Mm.
with their mind, but it feels like sometimes either maybe some people feel, I don't know your experience with this, can people have more heightened physical responses in general to emotions or more sensitive nervous systems, and
Mm.
whether that is because there has been something specifically traumatic or can you just exist in that space, and how can like somatic therapy help with that if it's just like you're existing in that space or specifically if you have had more of like a traumatic
Mm.
experience, because a lot of times it does really feel like with when you're checking in with your internal family systems and you're doing your part work, just being like there's always so much external things that are coming in, but should I be having this type of level of reaction when it seems like everything is fine,
Mm.
Mm.
you
Oh my
know?
gosh, I do know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted me to answer this, Emma?
Yeah, I would love like specifically like do you feel like people can have more like heightened physical responses and that would be something that would be really beneficial if you're interested in somatic therapy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
maybe why? Why do you think some people have more feel like it can be heightened specifically with physical responses?
Mm.
Okay. And I'm already thinking of things to respond to, but let me just get
Hmm.
really clear. What do you mean
Yes.
by physical responses?
Oh, we could say anxiety, kind of like Kelly and I have had a lot of conversations about this through our many, many years of being roommates of, I don't think I should be having, I'm just going to work, I'm doing my regular routine, and yet I feel as though I'm having the same physical response that my body has needed to have for years and years of there feels like there's a tiger in the room. There's clearly no longer a tiger in the room. I
Yeah.
no longer to be running from that. That's not how we live anymore. But why am I still having
Yeah.
that level of a physical
Mm.
response when it's just the day-to-day kind of thing?
100%. Yeah. Thank you for bringing the tiger in always. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like it makes so much sense from what Kelly was sharing about
Yeah.
like the reframe from judgment to curiosity.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's funny because partially what Kelly was saying was like I'm judging the judgment,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we
Yes.
do need judgment,
Hmm.
right? Our brains are wired to see like what's different than the rest,
Hmm.
right? Because when we did live on the savannah, we needed to see like the lion out of the zebra pack, you know.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
we do have a keen sense of judgment in the very, on our arousal system and like the
Hmm.
medulla oblongata, the brainstem, and like these like old parts of the brain, the oldest parts of the
Hmm.
brain. The youngest part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive function, the decision
Hmm.
making. So it's like,
Hmm.
I don't know, man. This feels like miles away
Hmm.
from like,
Mm-hmm.
this is, oh, and now I'm making a conscious decision. It's like, that's crazy. But
Mm.
so we have this a bit this like part in us that's like the cognition isn't necessarily online. It's just like action. It's just like act, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's an important kind of foundation to
Hmm.
lay about how the brain works.
Hmm.
And um, I want to bring in 2 points. I want to talk about how internal family systems talks about lineage burdens,
Hmm.
which are like parts that came online, perhaps not within our own lifetime, but
Hmm.
within our ancestors' lifetimes.
Hmm.
So like the history of the police, for example, was
Mhm.
to like catch enslaved folks who were maybe trying to escape for freedom.
Mhm.
And that's going to stay in your body. That's
Mhm.
life or death, right?
Mhm.
So, like, Black folks in America, regardless of an interaction that they may have with a police officer, have that kind of fear, threat, cortisol, adrenaline running through their body.
Mhm.
Um, Rightfully so, based on history,
Mhm.
right? And also based on current events.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
And so we're really like learning how to find safety within ourselves, sometimes in moments where there is threat present.
Mhm.
And that's an incredible feat, a really incredible feat. And sometimes we're finding safety, we're trying to find safety within ourselves when threat is not present. Like when you're saying, when there's like, you're like, there is no tiger in the room, right? But I'm responding as if there is.
Mhm.
And so just as much as the brain likes to have repetition about like, there's something here, this is wrong, hypervigilance, right? Is that a lion? Like, as much as our brain has a really like, that's keen, it's a takes that job very seriously. I think we can also give it a loving job to do, which in IFS we could call like job reassignment. I don't know
Mhm.
if I made that up. I think that's part of it.
I know
Job
I've done job
reassignment.
reassignments.
You give a different you do a different
Mhm.
job. Do you want to share that, Holly?
Yeah, I definitely have like a manager and a like a watch guard part for a while. And this particular part I did some work with years ago, but it felt like it was at a watchtower, and it was always streaming, looking like this, like light beam, making sure, like trying to find the flag to tell me
Mm,
that I was in danger. Like it was
mhm,
waiting for anything at a drop of the hat. It didn't believe that we were safe. um, and I really had to give it a new role. Like it didn't want to just like put down the watchtower. So man, I'm trying to remember what role specifically we gave it. But I think at first it was kind of like giving it a break, asking it if it
mhm.
wanted to take a break. And I don't think it
Yeah.
did. Some parts, my
Yeah.
manager part was like, yeah, girl, I'll go lay by the pool now. That's fine.
Mhm,
I'm overworked. But that
Mhm.
watchtower part was like, well, what if instead, like, I come over here and instead of like being on high alert all the time, we are focused on like decorating the space around here to make it feel safe. Like, rather than
Mm.
looking for that
mm,
danger, focus on like creating safety where you are.
Mhm.
And I think that was some work over time, that it was like it didn't want to take a break. It still felt like it needed to be working, and I needed to honor that part of it too. So then being like, okay,
mm.
let's try this instead. Kind of like training a dog, give it a
Yes,
Mhm.
new behavior.
yes. I think that's where meditation has just changed my life, like as a core thing for all of this.
Mhm.
I just, it's all meditation, like it's all bringing it
Yeah.
back to something. And yeah, I mean, when you talk about like retraining your brain, I think, oh yeah, I think maybe the second thing I wanted to share was that like we can have boundaries with our own parts.
Mm.
Like what it was Liz Gilbert, I know for a fact,
Thank
because I
you.
love that quote. I
Yeah.
love that quote where she's like talking about fear and creativity, and she's such a great speaker and just writer in person.
Incredible.
Um, but
Mhm.
I love this idea of like, maybe from like the BDSM community of like being like, okay, bitch, you want to tell me that you're
Mhm.
seeing like this, and this? Like you go off, queen. Like you tell me. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
or it's like you're being a bratty little sub, and
Yeah.
and like you actually don't get to tell me that right now, and I'm gonna give you like this like hot little like container that like you can just like kind of feel
Yes.
the parameters of, right? And then it's kind of like a
Yes.
weighted blanket for those parts.
Mhm.
It's like I know in my personal experience, like when I get to be around someone really safe and sturdy, I get to be like,
Mhm.
and like
Yes.
so like right? Just be like gas and like take up whatever the container
Yes.
is. And I'm just like, oh my God, okay, now I'm ready for a nap after that or something. Like
Right.
I feel so free and liberated to be able to show all of those different versions of
Yes.
myself. And sometimes I maybe Kelly, what Kelly was speaking to too, and like Emma, your question about this, like I sometimes think like I've definitely worked with people who are like, Molly, I don't want to be nice to this part. What are you talking about?
Mm.
Um,
Right.
it's like, don't force anything that's not, that you don't have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you get to take your power back.
Mm-hmm.
You get to say, like, I see you doing this thing. I don't think I fully understand how you've been trying to protect me for 30 years.
Mhm.
And I see that now. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I was, I just, whenever you tried to get my attention, I said, kindly fuck off. I'm trying to do something here, right? Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to live my life. I'm trying to get that bag,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
grocery store, like, calm down.
Mhm.
Like, we don't have time for this right now.
And we do
Yeah.
not have time for this right now, sweet one, right? I use a
Yeah.
lot of terms of endearment when I talk to myself.
Yeah.
Um,
I
sweet pea
love like
is my new
reframing it of like putting it into even like the spicy container
yeah.
because it can feel like it's such like heavy lifting sometimes or that you're like going to the grocery store and I don't have time for that. But to be able to even sometimes in those scenarios, I feel like check in the spicy container
Yeah.
makes it a little, can I guess maybe make it a little bit lighter and still continue like that conversation so it's not that you're checking in and having that conversation 30 years later too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still in relationship. There's honesty there. You're
Hmm.
being transparent. You're like, I love
Right.
you. And this is what love looks like right now. Love
Yeah.
looks like you being
Boundaries.
boundaries,
Hmm.
period.
Hmm.
Also,
I love
yeah,
Period.
that.
I'm like, I was gonna say the same thing, Emma. I literally was gonna say the word spicy. I was like,
Spicy,
I've never once heard
spicy
of like
container.
treating parts work or anything as like you can be like a little sexy with it. You can be a little rude with it if you need to be. You can
Mm-hmm.
be a little spicy.
Hmm.
Like I was
Yeah.
like, and I love that because it's the authenticity of how I would speak to someone I love and
Mm,
also that I trust, like with my sisters, my friends, like I just feel like there would be a way where I would be like, I use humor as a part of like
Do
a
you really,
communication
Kelly?
method. No, never. I never have. I've never done that before.
Never
You?
have, never will.
Never will. No. But like that's something that it almost feel and it's wild because also Molly, I know you said you're a yoga teacher as well, or that's something you
mhm,
bring in and I'm like, I feel like that is so important for me even right now. I feel like I'm having this aha moment where I'm like, the amount of times I have tried to be this like fake, like gentle parent to these parts that I'm actually just fucking pissed at. And then I'm
mm,
like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not doing anything. And then what it does is it makes me just not want to deal with it at all. And I'm like,
right.
and then I go to my own personal like unhealthy coping mechanisms where I'm like,
Hmm.
or as you said, what the fireman, the
Mm. Hmm.
firefighter,
Mm-hmm.
like I guess that's
Mhm.
it, where I'm like, instead of dealing with this, because I just can't, I'm just going to go to sleep and I'm just going to sleep, even though I have stuff to do, because I can't deal with it. And it's like,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
there's so much freedom in that and being like, hang on, you can be a little sassy. Just
Yeah.
let's have a little
Mm-hmm.
That
conversation.
almost
Take a
that
fucking
almost feels like when, like, because I think I'm sure we've all experienced that where you're like, I just can't deal with this. I think I'll just take a nap instead. But it almost feels like your body's like physical response to exile, like it feels like you're just
mm.
embodying that physically when you're just not,
Hmm.
we're not gonna.
You Emma, you made me think about like the other parts of your question too, like
Hmm.
just to bring in like um part of my training is in dialectical behavioral therapy,
Hmm.
DBT, which is like bringing Eastern philosophy to the West. It
Mm.
like creates like a manual for meditation and mindfulness and emotional regulation. Um, and it's really designed for folks who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder,
Hmm.
which is would like most people would consider like a highly reactive, highly sensitive being.
Hmm.
can be because of trauma, childhood experiences, like adverse childhood experiences, and also like just a predilection or like a predisposition for being highly sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think like the perspective that I always take, I just like I've worked with kids for a really long time. They've taught me almost everything that I know
Mm-hmm.
about being alive.
Mm.
And you know, if we usually do need a gentle yet firm, spicy container of love, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
like it's nobody's fault that they're being even I don't even think it's anybody's fault they're being like an asshole. You
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
know, there's this great quote that like every behavior has a function. And so, you know, that's when we can get curious about like, well, what need are you trying to meet in this way? Is there a better way we could meet this need?
Mm.
Because you probably whatever you're trying to get is probably like important and would
Mm-hmm.
nurture you and nourish you,
Mhm.
and you wouldn't feel like you have to like throw something across the room, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or be like really loud or inappropriate or some way. I know that inappropriate's, you know, an interesting term. Obviously, there's like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're just being like inappropriate and it's fine, but
And it's
sometimes we're
fun.
like, and it's
And
fun.
it's fun.
And yeah, and sometimes you're like going about something in a way where it's just like less skilled, like you don't have the skills yet.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, yeah, I learned that a lot from kids. And I think parts work also, like if we had this language, which we have always had
Mm-hmm.
this relationship to parts, because this is shamanism, this is indigenous wisdom. Dr. Richard Schwartz just kind of, you know, brought it to psychology
Mm-hmm.
in specific language, but it's been around forever, and plants and the earth has always known about this diversity of experience. But it's also like, you know, dissociative identity disorder used to be called multiple personality disorder,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and there's some like famous examples of that, of like people's parts that split, right, that like these aspects of self were so split that they almost didn't know the other existed, they weren't
Mm-hmm.
conscious of each other. And that's because of just very, very intense, you know, basic needs not being met.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have these like beautiful conversations where people are essentially speaking in that way of like, you know, I have a part, this is its character, this is what it sounds like, this is what it feels like, this is what it looks
Mm-hmm.
like. Sometimes it's nebulous and it's like just a shape or something.
Yeah.
um,
Or sometimes it looks like a Pixar character.
oh,
Hmm.
Love
definitely.
that.
You know, it's like in the zeitgeist, like
Yeah.
it's really, that's parts work, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
is that's it right there.
Mm.
And I just I rewatched it kind of recently, and a friend pointed out that Joy's hair is blue, and you know, it's because of this like, at least we decided that it's because of this journey of like joy and sadness. Joy and grief are
Yes.
one and the same.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Ah,
That's our
How
I'm gonna
wholeness
funny
start
right
that
crying from
there.
that.
I know. I already cried when I watched that like 10 times. You kidding me?
Ugh.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like, I love that it's like in the zeitgeist now, because what if we had all been lucky enough to get
Mm.
that verbiage when we were little kids watching Pixar? I mean, I feel like every Pixar movie basically feels like parts work, but to be able to like hit the nail on the head, like I feel like that they have been doing with like even like Inside Out, you know, and just
Mhm.
introducing that and
Mhm.
bringing that into more work with kids and your day to day, like it makes it seem like it's just more approachable to people who maybe are not as interested or haven't been, um, you know, haven't experienced this
Yeah,
kind of topic
Mm.
before.
it makes
Hmm.
it so accessible. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
one about puberty, the Pixar one with the red panda and like anger and
Mm-hmm.
like having a
Mhm.
period for the first time, like these are
Mm-hmm.
just not like cultural initiations that we really talk about like in a
Mm-hmm.
tribal community kind of way, which are, I mean, I can't, like all of us, if you menstruate, you know, I think we do in this group, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's insane to all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden be bleeding, and then,
Mhm.
Mm.
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like these
And still
experiences
have
of
to
like
go to
your
work.
body, it's
Yeah.
crazy, dog.
Yes.
Right? So like it's like, whoa, body, like
Mhm.
you're just actually experiencing a cycle of like death, rebirth, and like
Yeah.
Mm,
but we need mentors, we need like elders who can
Yeah.
help us on the path. And I think not to pedestal therapists, because I don't think that that's healthy. And I think that a lot of conversations that come out of therapeutic spaces are, can be really healing.
Mhm.
There are people who don't, who aren't therapists who are doing really therapeutic work also, like, so I just think it is really cool. Now we can take what we know now and just do our very best to give that to ourselves, because then we're giving it to everybody around us.
I have got to do a quick plug for some shameless self promotion here. So, first, if you're like looking for a creative spark in your life or a way to bring more wellness into your day, I have the best thing for you. You can get my 28-day creative wellness e-workbook. It's a 28-day challenge, and each day has a poetic affirmation, a wellness practice, and a creative practice for you to do that are all 11 minutes or less. So it's like the best way to start your day. You can use the code Keep Creating for 15% off for How the Wise One Grows listeners, and there's a link in the show notes to get it. And I also want to invite you all on this incredible creative wellness retreat in Santa Teresa, Costa Rica, that Preston Slaughter and I are leading November 9th through 14th, 2025. We actually did a creative wellness episode all about it in episode 115, if you want to listen to it and find out all the details. But pretty much we'll be spending 6 days in Costa Rica, nourishing our bodies, minds, and creative spirits through yoga, mindfulness, and creative practices. It's honestly like a dream retreat, and spaces are filling up, and I really want How the Wise One Grows listeners there. So there's a link in the show notes for the episode talking all about it and the link to sign up. Okay, let's go to Costa Rica.
This is kind of going all the way back, but I'm curious because I am just meeting you today. Did you like have some did you grow up in a community or in a family or something that like valued like this kind of therapy, somatic therapy experiences, this kind of like um
Mm.
I forget the exact wordage that you used, but it was so you were like this has been around in nature, in like indigenous people have known about this for thousands of years. It was that something that was like very valued to you growing up, or did you discover this? Like how did you get into this basically?
Wow. Wow. I'm really honored to answer this question. Um, I've been writing about this. I've been
Mm.
writing about how I got into somatics, and like literally just today.
Mm,
Um, okay, I'm gonna try and be brief. I think it's a very interesting story. I have always like been really enamored by my teachers.
Mhm.
Like I remember like I think pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, like early experiences of being like, this is so cool that we all get together and like
I
make
know.
art and hang out and like eat
Mm-hmm.
snacks and like wear like a little outfit and like play dress up and have like structure and freedom be
yeah.
so beautifully like in homeostasis, like in
Mhm.
equilibrium, that just
Mm,
like really jives. I was saying before, right? I like to like when there is a structure, I get to push up against that, and
Mhm.
that
Mm-hmm.
feels really good to me. And then yeah, I get to like find my center within that, which is a fun somatic thing where it's like you can even just like sway from side to side. And it's when you feel lost or like pulled around by the universe, and it's like, well, I'll do that for myself. And then it's like, well, what am I moving through? Like, what is
Mhm.
center? What does that feel like? Because we can feel so off center so
mm,
easily. But so my teachers really held it down, and I was like, so fascinated and absolutely in love with like education as a concept.
Mhm.
I guess like school was this very safe meeting place. Um, and so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And then when I went to undergrad, okay, so I'm a big camp nerd. I went to sleepaway camp my entire life. And that was where I learned about like upward mobility because it would be like,
Mm,
I would be a camper and then I'd be like a leader in training and I'd get to work
mhm,
with the day camp kids. And then I'd be
mm,
a counselor, a CIT in training, a counselor in training. And I'd get to work with like the younger kids at that camp. And then I got to be a junior counselor, senior counselor. And then I like did the special needs camp with my friends. Um, and that was always a very, very special thing about my camp is that we had this like incredible special needs program. And
mhm,
yeah, camp was a very, very special place. So then I learned about like being in nature and yeah, being a part of something like we would do skits and songs. And I was like, you know, I love that kind of stuff. And it all felt somatic. It really did. Like we would say it was a YMCA camp. I told you I'm Jewish, and so it was just. But we would sometimes do like grace before we ate, and it
mhm,
wasn't like Jesus, but it was like. Thank you, Lord, for giving us food. Thank you, Lord, for giving us food. Our daily bread. We need to be fed. Thank you, Lord, for giving us food. And we would just like put like a little
Wow.
napkin in the back of our shirt and do like a Superman thing.
Yes.
yes.
It was not religious at all, but it was like,
Mhm.
dang, thanks.
Mhm.
And so like that, I was like, whoa, I'm so grateful for being able to sing and dance with my friends,
Mm, mhm,
and have like a counselor who cares about us. So I felt so supported and nurtured there, and like really became Molly Beans at camp,
mm,
big beans. And then my younger sibling came, and they were little beans, and it was a whole thing.
Aw.
Um, it was very sweet. So I had
I love
family,
that.
like you're talking about like community, and I
Mhm,
had that family outside of my home was nurtured.
mm,
Um, and so that was incredibly imperative for me. And then when I went to college, that was definitely a hard transition because I was like, where are my friends that I've gone to camp with for so many years?
mhm,
And I studied sociology, human development, education, psychology, environmental studies, and dance.
oh wow.
And
Wow.
so that's where I took like my first yoga
Mhm,
class. That's where I learned Tai Chi. Um, I did a play and I sang in an a cappella group. And so different aspects of my creativity were just like continuing to get nurtured. I sang in and did plays in high school and stuff. And then um when I graduated college, some trigger warning for like broken bones in this next
mhm,
part. Um I when I graduated college, I was living at home with my parents, and they are both incredible athletes. Both of my
mm,
parents have done multiple marathons and like countless triathlons.
mhm.
And my mom literally just competed in like two international triathlons that you have to be like invited
Wow.
into.
Wow.
No big
She's like,
deal.
she is one of the fastest people alive.
Wow.
So like athleticism has always been a part of. I rebelled against it for so long. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sleeping. What don't you understand? Like, I'm not like you
I'm like,
know?
this is a sport.
Let me live.
Listen, I'm getting an A plus plus in this. Like, be proud of it.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes, let the record show. I'm a great sleeper. And so I did, when I was living at home, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do what my parents were doing because it feels easier. And
Mhm.
I trained with them for the entire year, and I
Oh.
did my first triathlon, and I felt so invincible.
Mhm.
I felt like literally on top of the world. And it's like a sprint. It's not like an Ironman's. I just want to be clear.
Mhm.
It was like 10 laps in the pool, like a 10K bike, and then a 5K run, which is still many of things.
Yeah.
And I trained for it and I did it and I felt great. And then later that night, it was my dear friend's birthday. And I was so excited to like meet up with my friends. And I ran onto this like bridge that we used to sit on when we were kids and like dangle our feet. And I ran on and I lost my balance and I fell backwards. And in midair, I was falling backwards and I heard a voice and it was God. And she was a Black woman. And she said, "Bitch, you better catch yourself." Clear as day. I had never
Oh.
heard anything like that. What was I going to do? Not listen to her? You know what I mean? So then I turned around midair. I was falling
Wow.
backwards. I turned around midair. And then I caught myself on all fours, but my chin kept going. I like broke
Oh.
my jaw.
Oh.
I broke a bunch of teeth. I shattered my left kneecap. And I like turned up to my friends on the bridge and I was like, "Is it bad?" Like, and
Oh no.
they were like, "Oh my
Not the
God,
teeth
you're
lisp.
Is it bad?
on the floor."
No.
Yeah, and my friends were like, "You're beautiful." Oh my God.
They're like, can't look at you, but
I can't even imagine what it was like for
Oh
them
my
to.
gosh.
Yeah,
oh.
and so my body did this amazing thing where I was in shock. I really wasn't feeling all that much pain. I knew something was wrong because I couldn't bend my left leg and my teeth were on the ground. But I made my like we made our way to the hospital. Parts of the story are really so hilarious that I can maybe share with you guys another time. But um, it really catapulted me into like my journey with somatics. I was like, if I ever want to learn how to heal other people, I am being gifted with the opportunity to learn how to heal myself. And my younger sibling had already become a yoga teacher. They did chair yoga with me. My parents gave me supplements. My jaw was wired shut for 2 weeks. I had to like be on an all liquid diet. Um, I started doing comedy during that time too. I was just like letting it all hang out. I was like using Snapchat and like doing just like weird bits and stuff. Um, and yeah, I just like had no shame, you
Oh my
know?
gosh.
And I felt, yeah, amazing. um, and I was like working at my old high school. I was like being a paraprofessional, which is like working with like sometimes like kids with who just maybe have some special needs or like need extra support at school. Um, and then I applied to become a yoga teacher. It was a 9-month program. So I was literally like gestating and birthing a new version of myself over this like course of 9 months. And it was so comprehensive. And then I also applied to like a dual master's program, which were just two completely different masters. But one was in social work and one was in special and general education. And then I started when I got into both, when I got my teacher certification and everything, and I started working at a school for kids with special needs. I like took over like the social emotional learning like aspects of the curriculum, learned a whole bunch of stuff, and yeah, then I started my private practice, Magic with Molly, and I found my way to like like somatics through different mentors and just continuing to be like dance therapy feels really good and like um yeah, like moving my body in different ways and being theatrical and doing things in community. And then yeah, I think somatics just had like opened itself to me of like these are very specific ways to like work with this. And then it's just like it was such a beautiful marriage with everything that I had studied academically. Up until that point, obviously my experiential aspect of that was like it just all really gelled. So it's a long-winded answer.
I
Um,
love it.
Molly,
Thanks.
I love that. I want to be mindful of time, but before we let you go, I just want to ask two, you can make them quick answers. But for someone listening, how would you recommend someone start to engage with somatics or start like working with their body language just on like a
Mm.
in a daily life, not in a therapy session?
Mhm.
And how can people connect with you and work with you and support the work that you're doing and receive support from you?
Yay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. And it was just so nice to meet you all and like chat. Clearly we're all on like a really phenomenal healing journey. So it feels really, I feel really honored to be in y'all's presence. And so thanks for honoring my presence. I would say to start how to connect with the language of your body is to just see what happens when you're not really doing all that much.
Mm.
Um, I know that for me, I'm still learning how I like lived in New Jersey and New York before Richmond. Like, you're always doing something.
Mhm.
And my nervous system is like still getting used to the slower pace of Richmond, even though it's like, it's still a city. Um,
Mhm.
but I know that I'm learning how to like integrate rest, still into my life, even though I'm an A+ sleeper. Um, like honoring that. And so what comes up sometimes are like discomfort or like
Mhm.
I should, right? The shoulds, or
Mhm.
I would just like that's an intense practice, really, of just like noticing what happens when you pause. So if
Mhm.
that feels like too much, I would notice what happens when you breathe. This thing that is like automatically happening all the time, like our heartbeat, can also be paired with a more like conscientious relationship. Like we're breathing no matter what, but we can also
Mhm.
like manipulate our breath in ways to upregulate ourselves, like Kapalabhati, or downregulate ourselves, like increasing our exhales by 1 or even 2 seconds. Um, and studies show that 3 to 5 breaths will shift your internal experience. So I
Wow.
would say start with 3 breaths, like you let us in at the beginning, and just do a pre post test. How was I feeling before? How was I feeling after?
Mhm.
Um, and it's okay if you don't have words for it. You're just there to kind of notice and observe. And your body really needs repetition. It like really, really needs to practice, 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 practice.
Mhm. Mhm.
Even when you want to resist, just be like, I'm noticing resistance. Um, yeah, I have so many things that I could say for that. I'm gonna keep it there. Yeah, people can find me by searching Magic with Molly to find my website. You can read a little bit about my fall, my accident on my website. You can find the contact page. You can learn about my offerings. Um, I have openings for one-on-one somatic therapy clients. So you can find me at Rabbi Shmuley on Instagram. That's
Love.
RABBISCHMOOLY. And you can hang with me and I post pictures of plants and like other things that I'm doing around town.
Love it.
I will have all of Molly's
Mhm.
things linked in the show notes for people to go ahead and listen to. Um, Molly, cannot thank you enough for having this conversation with us. I want to talk to you forever and want to keep
I
going,
know.
but we will honor your time today. So thank you so much for this time and space. And we love you and hope to have you back.
Oh, I'd love that. And I love you guys.
Hey, listeners, I just want to let you know that I love you, we love you, and thank you for listening. And we need your support to keep this podcast going. So you can support the podcast by joining the Dream Team for as little as $3 a month, following the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Just hit that little follow button and leave a review, preferably a 5-star review, and share an episode you love with a friend. This is like talking to the podcast algorithm gods and helps more people find the pod. And it means the world to us and makes our dreams come true. So join the dream team, leave a review, follow the pod, and share an episode you love. And we will continue having these creative conversations with you.